All right, good morning everyone. Welcome to this Mag Plus webinar. I'm Mike Haney. I'm the U.S. Director of Mag Plus. I'm a former editor and graphic designer, and I've been with this project since the very beginning. If you've watched any of our tutorial videos out on magplus.com, you might recognize my voice from the "Hi, I'm Mike, and today we're going to do X." Well, today I'm going to walk you through the system, the tools, and really start to tell you how to get going building a page. We're going to start with a blank page. We're going to build some things and review them. Then I'm going to show you a couple of the additional features of things you can add into your Mag Plus pages, like video and links. And then I'll show you a little bit about the rest of the system, the reviewing app, the production tool, and our backend we call Mag Plus Publish. If at any time you have questions during this, you are probably seeing a little chat window over to the side of the window that you're watching this on. If you just go ahead and type your questions into that. We've got a couple of folks on our end manning that chat, and they'll answer you back pretty quickly. If there are questions that are asked pretty commonly, they're going to shoot them over to me, and at the end of my talking, I'm going to address those and answer any specific things that you guys are wondering about. We'll also be recording this webinar and put it up on our site later, so if you have to duck out, if you just get bored listening to my voice, or if you just want to go back and listen again, you'll be able to go out to magplus.com and give it another listen. Since I know we have a lot of different people from around the organization listening today, I wanted to start, rather than diving directly into the tools, I wanted to start by just giving you a really quick overview of what Mag Plus is, in case you don't know. So Mag Plus is a production system. It's a full ecosystem, really, for getting your content onto touchscreen tablets. And it starts in Adobe InDesign. We work with CS4, CS5, or CS5.5. Today I'll be using 5.5. We have a plugin that sits on top of your InDesign page, and we have a blank InDesign template that you get as part of our production system. We also have another piece we call the production tool, which is where you organize your issue, and I'll show you that a little later. And perhaps coolest of all, we have an app we call the Reviewer app, which is free out in the iTunes Store. You can go download it, and that talks directly to the InDesign plugin and to the production tool over a wireless network, so that anytime as you're creating, you can hit a button and see what you're making, see how it will actually function on the tablet. The Reviewer app is the same code as our branded Reader app, which is what you use to publish your content out to the world once you're ready to do that. So you'll be able to see exactly what the user experience is going to be on the things that you're making in real time. And I'll be demonstrating that today using a simulator so that you can see it through the screen, but typically it works directly on your iPad. Finally, there's a third piece, and I'll show you this at the end of the webinar today, which we call Mag Plus Publish. And that's our online administrative portal where you do things like upload those issues that you've built using our tools so that they can appear in that in-app store or in-app library in your application. You can also do things from that portal like send notifications to your users and let them know that a new issue is out, or set up test devices that can review issues through the app before they actually go public. And just to quickly touch on the pricing of all this, as I know that's a question that often starts to come in as I get going, I'll start with the best part. All the tools you need to create this are free. And that's not a sort of free. They're really actually free. You can go out and download them today at magplus.com. You get the InDesign plugin, the template, the production tool, and then head out to the iTunes Store to get the Reviewer app. And what that means is that you can really download these tools and start playing with them, start building things out, start experimenting in your organization. You could build out a whole issue of your magazine or your catalog or your annual report, show it around internally, take it to advertisers, do some internal focus grouping with it if you like, before you ever pay us a nickel. We really want people to be able to play with this system and see how it's going to work for them before they have to commit to anything. Once you've created something beautiful, as you surely will, and you want to push that out to the world, you want your own app that you can skin with your brand and you can submit to Apple and have out in the iTunes Store. That app is $2,500. It's a one-time fee. You pay us that, you can push that app out to the iTunes Store and it can live there forever. That app also comes with 5 months of free publishing. So that's access to that Mag Plus Publish backend I talked about, which is what lets you publish new issues to the app. So for 5 months you can try as much as you want, publish as much as you want through it. If you're only a single publication, maybe a book, something like that, you never pay us again. $2,500 is all it is. If you do want to continue publishing, you have a couple of options. You can either pay us $500 per issue when you publish, if you publish, say, infrequently, quarterly or a couple times a year, Or you can pay us $500 a month and publish as much as you want. So if you're a weekly or a monthly, but you want to try putting some extra special issues out, you'll never pay us more than $500 a month, no matter how much you publish. The only other fee that can come into this is downloading fees. So the issues that you create have to live on a server somewhere, and we let you go ahead and host those yourselves. Many organizations have the infrastructure to do that, so you can host those issues yourself. You don't have to pay us anything, and we don't have to get involved. If you'd like us to take care of the hosting for you, we're happy to do that. We simply use an Amazon S3 account, which is the major storage service on the internet, and we pass on the direct data fees to you. So however much data is actually transferred when your users download those issues, that's all you pay for, and it's 17 cents a gigabyte. So an average issue size might be about 250 megs, so you could plan on about 3 to 4 cents per download. But again, only what's actually downloaded. There's no prepaying of those downloads. All right, so now I'm going to quit out of PowerPoint, and I'm going to jump directly into the tools. I'm not going through the installation today, but I will show you what happens when you install this. So when you go to our site and you download the tool set, it'll go to your downloads folder, wherever that might be, and you'll get a zip file. You unzip that file, and inside you'll see all of these things. The installation, which has the tools you need in it, the InDesign template, which is what we'll be working off today, as well as a template for creating a custom table of contents, some examples of material, and all of our PDF manuals. These are also all available out on our site, so you can go out there and download those and read through them anytime. They're really exhaustive. In addition to those manuals that we have, there are also a number of tutorial videos out on our site that you can use to learn how to do specific things like drop in a movie or add a link or simply install the tools. They're all relatively short videos. So I'm just going to open up the InDesign template from here and get going. Actually, that's the TOC template, so I'm not going to open up that one. Let me open up this one. You might sometimes get that panel that says you're missing some links. I'll show you what those links are before I go into the plugin over here. The Mag Plus template comes already spec'd out in your layers palette with all the layers that you need to create three-dimensional content in this space. Mag Plus has 2 layers of content presentation, and I'll show you what that means as I start building this page. And all of that is already set up over here. But in addition to those content layers that we have, there are also layers that simply have guides to kind of show you what it's going to look like when you're building these on the actual iPad. So I can turn on this iPad landscape, and it will show me what content would appear on the iPad when it was turned that direction, or the iPad portrait. So these are just images of an iPad that are embedded in the file. So when you see that update links, it's just looking for these. They don't really need to be there. These will never print or export or be part of your layout. They're on non-printing layers. There's also a third guide layer that shows you both orientations at once. And again, I'll show you exactly what that means when I get into building a page. So over here is the Mag Plus plugin, and I won't go through this sort of feature by feature. We'll discover things as we go along and build. But the important things you need to sort of set up right away are here in this issue box. This is your issue folder, and what that means is when I'm all done with this page and I click this export button, the plugin is going to convert everything that I put on this page into the types of files and the language that our system needs to read it in that reader app, whether that's the reviewer or whether that's your app out in the store. So the issue folder is where I'm telling it to collect all those assets to. One of the great things about Mag Plus is that you don't have to worry about converting those images and those files beforehand. You can jump in with 300 DPI, CMYK, TIFF images, and when you hit export, we'll convert them down to 132, which is the resolution of the iPad screen, RGB, PNG or JPEG, whatever you need, and we'll collect everything together in a neat little bundle in whatever folder you point to here. And later when we jump into the production tool where we're going to assemble all of our individual verticals into an issue, that production tool is going to look at this folder for anything that I've exported. So I'm just going to create a new one here. I've got my folder called Demo Material. Now this issue folder can go anywhere you like. It really doesn't matter where it goes. Just put it somewhere where you remember. So I'm going to say New, and I'm just going to call it Issue. That's all we have to do there. The other couple of things that are good to do when you first start out is the ID and the name. The difference between these is that the ID is simply an internal reference. That's really what the system will reference this page as when you're doing, or this vertical as when you're doing internal links across verticals, when you export it to production tool. So just use this to give it a name or give it an ID that you'll remember, you'll know what it is. So I'm just going to call this test recipe. No spaces, no funky characters in this field, so I've just used the underscore to separate. Now the name, on the other hand, this will be seen by your users, by people who download the issue. If somebody bookmarks a page, which is a capability within our app, they can tap the upper right corner and save that page to come back to it quickly later. Or if you use our basic table of contents feature, this is the name for this vertical that's going to appear there. So this you want to be something that you're okay with folks seeing, and that's going to adequately describe what this page is. So here I'm just going to call this recipes. Now I'll come back to the rest of these things later, but let's start putting some content on here. So as I mentioned, Mag Plus has a few different layers, or two different layers of content presentation, and those are represented over here in the layers palette under A and two different B layers. So I'm just going to start by bringing an image into my background B layer. The idea behind this multiple layer structure is that you can have more than one thing going on in this canvas at once. This isn't like print, where we're constrained by the edges of the page and have to always fit everything within our little space. Here users can and will scroll to find more things. And there's also the ability to have content moving over the top of other content and then turn that off so that you can fit more things onto a page. And you'll see what I mean here. So I'm going to start with this, since it's morning where I am, I'm going to start with this picture of a beautiful pastry. I've just imported that the way you import any image, and then I'm going to use this button over here to squeeze it into my box. Now I've drawn this box in such a way that it covers the entire space that's going to be visible in either orientation of the screen. So again, if I go back and turn on my bezel guide, you'll see that in the horizontal orientation of the iPad, this is the crop that will be seen. And in the vertical orientation of the iPad, this is the crop that will be seen. Now I want to get this a little bit more centered, so I'm just going to pull that up a bit. And now let's just take a look and see how this is going to look on the iPad. Again, I'm going to do that using the simulator. And I've already got the reviewer app running out here. So I'm just going to double check that my setup is right. When you first download the reviewer app, you'll sign into it and it'll unlock some of these buttons. Then you'll look under the help menu for this push service. This is the IP address of your iPad. As long as your iPad is on the same wireless network as the computer running InDesign, the two will be able to talk to each other. So back here in InDesign, in my plugin, I can click on the Settings tab and just make sure that this address matches what I just pulled up in the reviewer. In this case it does. If it didn't, I could just hit the plus sign and enter that in. So now let's hit Fast Review and see what happens. I'm going to get an error box, and the reason is that you always have to save your file once before you review it. So let me go ahead and do that. We'll just save it in my same demo material folder. Again, you can put this anywhere. This doesn't have to be part of that issue folder. The structure a lot of folks do when they start building issues is not unlike you do in print. You'll have one folder that contains all of your subfolders for each vertical, and maybe put your issue folder inside there. But it's really up to you. So we'll just call this recipe. Now let me hit the Fast Review button. Now you'll see what it does. It almost looks like a print box when you hit the print and it spools something off. It's really kind of the same thing. It's converting what I've put here on the page into a format that can be read, instead of by a printer, by our reviewer app. So now if I pop out to our simulator, there's my image. And you can see when I turn the device, it simply crops differently. Let's put a little content over the top of this. Not that that's not nice to look at. Now, I've already gone ahead and set all of my types, so you don't have to watch me mess with kerning and tracking and those kinds of things here. So let me open up that InDesign file. And I'm just going to grab all of these elements. I'm just going to copy them. Now you can go through this same procedure when if you're converting something from print to the iPad. Open up your print page, grab everything that's there, just copy it, and paste it into here. I'm just going to drag this down. I've sort of put this in an order that I like. I want a lot of that image to be visible when somebody comes onto the page. And I just want them to be able to scroll up and see more of that recipe there. But this is what I want to really hit them when they get to the page. It's just the title, a little indication to scroll, and this picture. Now I've just dropped this onto this B slides layer. This is that background layer, and if I do this, I won't be able to scroll this freely over the top of this one because they're on the same layer. So I'm just going to cut it off of there. I've just hit Command X to cut. I'm going to select my A layer, which is my top free scrolling layer. I'm going to hit paste in place and put it back where I want it to be. So let's just quickly hit the fast review and see what happens. This is a really valuable tool when you're designing. I keep saying things like see what happens because it's really what you're doing. Put some things on there, hit the review button, see what it feels like. If it works, if it's coming through the way you want. If not, change something, hit the button again. So there we see we've got my title in there. If I scroll up, I can see the rest of my recipe here, so that's pretty good. If I double click the screen, just like the user could at any time, you double click the screen, it turns off that A layer, so then I can just take in this big beautiful image here again. This is coming through pretty much like I want it to. If I turn, you'll see that again it's simply cropping differently. I lose my little scroll button here when I turn it. I don't necessarily want to do that, so we'll fix that. And the other thing I've noticed is that my little curly Q design element I had here is not coming through, and I'll tell you why that happened. So let me go back in here. Grouping is a really important part of designing with the Mag Plus system, and that's because when I hit that review button or when I'm done and I hit the export button and our system starts doing all that conversion, what it's doing is essentially taking pictures of the elements that I've put on here and then organizing them together. So right now all of these things are on the same layer and they can all move together, all of this text that I've put here. So right now it's failing to read this little graphic because it's not grouped with the rest of the system. So now I'm just going to go ahead and group all of these elements together except that little scroll button, and I'll explain why. So let me group this and let's just see if that solved my problem. Okay, it did. There's my little curly Q. I hope you can see that. And when I turn, it lines up nicely there at the bottom. The way that I've lined that up is using these inbuilt guides that we come with on the template. Now, of course, you can turn those off. But if you turn them on, this little purple box is the edge of your always visible area. If I turn on this bezel again, you'll see what I mean. So the one thing I want to still change on this page is that I want this scroll button to stay visible even when somebody turns the device. I want them to know that they have to scroll it. So I'm going to move it off of this A layer because they really only need to see it before they start scrolling. And I'm going to put it on this other layer we haven't used yet, the B pinned blocks layer. So that means it's going to go on the background layer. In other words, it's going to stay there even when the user double taps the screen. But pinning is a capability that happens in our system that allows you to control where elements go when the user turns the device. So I'm just going to do a paste in place again on that B layer. Let's see what this looks like, and then I'll explain how it's going to work, or how it ended up looking and working like that. Hit my fast review again, go out to my simulator. Now you can see here's my little scroll button. When I turn, it's moved dynamically to stay up in this corner. So let me show you how we did that. When I put something on either the A or the B pinned blocks layer, I can set a pinning, and that's done over here in the plugin. So you'll see there's a horizontal pin and a vertical pin. So it really gives me pretty precise control over where I want that element to pin to. And by pin, what we mean is maintain a relative distance from that edge. So here I've said pin left, and so it's going to always stay this distance away from the left edge, whatever that is. In the vertical, this is my left edge. In the horizontal, this is my left edge, but it will always stay that distance away. And same thing with bottom. It will always stay this distance away from the bottom. So if I jump back out to the sim, let's take a look at that. So now you can see here's my distance between the left edge and my distance between the bottom. When I turn, it stays the same. It jumps up to that corner, so it's always visible. When I double click, it still stays visible and tells me I can go ahead and scroll. I can do a similar kind of pinning with things on the A layer. Here I'm just going to leave this content centered, so I don't need to do that. And in this case, you notice that I didn't actually go over here and change anything. That's because the system figured this out automatically. Over in our settings tab, there's a little box called calculate default pinning. If that's checked, whenever you put an element on this pinned blocks layer or the A layer, the system will figure out what edge it's closest to, guess at that that's the edge you want it to pin to, and set this. If you turn that off, then it'll let you always go in here and just set it yourself, and the default will be none. Now let's say that I'm pretty happy with this page, but I want to put another recipe down beneath this when somebody scrolls vertically. The way that that's done in our system is by adding another page into this document. Each InDesign document represents one vertical. You can think of a vertical just like a page, except that it has the ability to scroll up and down, so that's why we call it a vertical. Other people call it a stack or other things like that. So here I'm going to hit Create New Page. Now you'll see I get another page with my same guides, just like the one above. And if I zoom out on this, you'll get a sense of what this template actually looks like. You can see it's kind of a strange shape. It's the right width for the absolute widest view of the iPad screen, but it's very, very long. And that's so that I can put as much text as I want here, scrolling over the top of this B layer. But when I want a new slide to come into this B layer, like in order to put a new recipe on here, I create a new page. So let's quickly build out this one in kind of the same style. So I'm going to draw a picture box. I'm going to go over into my layers, put this in my main content layer. So that's my background layer that's not going to pin. Again, I'm going to take it all the way to the edges of these guides. In this case, let's take this beautiful picture of mint, and we'll squeeze it out here, fit it into our box, and kind of change the cropping. And I'll go back to my text, and I think I've got my watermelon mojito text already set here as well. So this time I'm just going to grab everything, group it together here, copy it, back out here, paste. Now you'll notice here I've also set a transparency in this white box behind the text so that when you scroll you'll be able to see a little bit of the image behind it. So that's certainly possible. It's an interesting way to use the layers, that you can have those transparencies and have people sort of see through them. So again, I'm setting it here so my little curly Q is right to the bottom of that. Now let's hit the fast review and see how this page turned out. Here's my page again. Now when I get to the bottom of this A layer, you'll see this new B layer snaps into place, and there's my text beneath it. Now this is not quite cropping the way I want it to. And I know exactly why it did that, so I'm gonna show you how we fix that here. The reason is that when I pasted this in, I pasted it here on this main content. So what happened is this whole group of objects is now sitting over the top of this layer, of this image, because they're all on the same layer. And because I put this on top, it's sort of taking precedence over the image. So you'll see it doesn't scroll because I don't have it on that free scrolling A layer. And it's just giving it a white background for that whole group and supersede that image. So really easy to fix. I'm just going to cut it off of that layer, choose my A layer, hit paste in place, and now let's try this again and see if we've fixed it. That's the kind of thing that will happen as you're designing here. It's a new space and new tool set, and sometimes it won't look quite the way you expect it to. But again, typically pretty easy to fix, and as long as you can keep reviewing, you can usually figure out what you did. There, so now I've got my new image. When I got to the bottom of this A layer, when the bottom of this A layer here, so this end of this box is the bottom of the content for this first page, when that crosses the halfway point of the screen here, it triggers the system to bring in that new slide behind it. And here's my text that I can bring in. Now you'll see this scrolls over the top exactly the same way. I can double click to turn it off. So now I want to show you another sort of interesting feature. Now when I go through and have this new image slide into place, the user has to keep scrolling before this text appears, and that may not be a good user experience. They may not keep going up to find that text. So what I want it to do is actually kind of snap into place about here, and then let the user keep scrolling it, but I want to make sure it gets onto that page. So I'm going to use a feature we call snapping. If I go over here to my plugin, there's a pull-down menu called Snap, and you can choose where you snap to. Outer top, inner top, and top have to do with the difference between the top, what's considered the top of the visible area in the other orientation that you're in. So inner top is always 128 pixels down from the top edge. Outer top is always the absolute outer top. So if I do that and then I turn the device, I might crop off a little bit. And top is the relative top. So if I just choose top, which is what I usually pick, oh, wrong one, And let's make sure I've got the right content selected. So this whole group I'm going to pin. I'm going to say top. Now let's hit fast review. This is probably not going to do what I want it to do, and then I'll come back and explain to you why. So now I'm scrolling, I get to the bottom of this vertical, my new one comes in, and yeah, it didn't quite snap into place. Let me show you how we hack that system, how we make it do this. What it's doing is it's looking at the whole A layer, and it's going to snap the whole A layer to the top of this page. So to get it to appear right in this spot, I'm going to actually kind of cheat it. And right now the A layer starts here at this kind of 2/3 of the way down the page. Instead, I'm going to draw another box on the A layer, just an empty box. I'm going to put it up here at the top, and I'm going to group it with all of this. So now you see my A layer does start here. So when this snaps into place, it's going to bring the whole A layer up to this top, but the first visible part of the A layer is going to be here. So now let me turn this snap back on. And here, let's just try inner top and see what happens. Hit my fast review. And now you can see what's happening when I scroll up. It's actually snapping further down than I want it to, because I've set it to snap in an ideal spot for here in this vertical orientation. So let me show you that again. When I'm scrolling this up, the new thing pops into place and that text snaps right there. So I could fix that pretty easily just by moving this around, or by trying something like outer top instead. Let me go back to this layer here and make sure that we don't have any extra elements. Sometimes if it's taking a long time for something to transition in, you might have some invisible elements down here in the A layer that's making the system think the A layer is longer than it is. So we'll just do one more review and then we'll move on to some other things. So now I scroll up, and there my text snaps into place. And now if I turn it, it's still right where I want it to be. So let's look at that one more time. I scroll up, and there it's snapped right where I want it to. So this way I can control the presentation of the layout whenever a user gets to a new slide or a new vertical, but then they can just grab it and move it as they like. So let me show you some other interesting examples of how the layers can be used. This is a pretty basic one here. Let me open up a cool layout from Transworld Snowboarding. Let me turn off the guide so you can just see this. And I'm going to hit review on this first, and let's look at the way it actually functions for the user, and then we'll come back and see how they did that. Oh, I got my save error again. So let me go ahead and save this. And now we'll hit the review button. This will take a little bit longer to review. The difference, by the way, between fast review and full review is that when you click fast review, it's actually using InDesign to do all of that image conversion and write all of that XML and downscale everything. That means you're not going to get quite as good an image quality, and it's going to be relatively low res quality when you look at it on the iPad, but it's going to happen pretty quickly. If you hit full review, it's going to do the same thing it does when you'd export, and that is trigger Photoshop to go out and do full resolution conversions and do some really smart scripting and converting of these assets so they look ideally optimized for the iPad. That'll take a little bit longer, but if you want to see exactly how it's going to look for your user, that's the button you want to push. So let's go out and see how this thing looks. Let me turn it this way. So here you can see I've got my A layer, which scrolls with some text over the top of that background image. I really like this. If I double tap, all that goes away and I see the photo credit, and they've lined up this cool picture of the eye with the picture of the eye on the B layer there. You'll see that as I scroll up, I get a nice gradient coming over the top of that text in the back until I get to this little chevron. And when I get up a certain amount, a new slide, this is essentially kind of a photo slideshow of these beautiful snowboarding photos, zips into place. And the only thing that's on the A layer here, if I turn, you'll see this caption is pinned, and that's on the B layer, because if I double tap the screen, it stays there. So they want to make sure the user always sees this caption when they're looking at the photo. And all they've used the A layer for here is this little chevron. Just a way to add a little bit of dynamic feel to what would otherwise be a pretty simple slideshow. It's just a way of telling the user, hey, there's more down here that you can scroll up for. Until I get to the bottom one, and then there's no more arrow pointing me down. And again, here you can see that caption moving. So the way that they've done that here is really pretty simple. That gradient that we saw coming over the top, that's just some additional box here on the A layer. So they've drawn a box down below this B layer, down below the bottom of this slide, given it a simple gradient here in InDesign using InDesign's tools, and that creates this sort of gradient effect where it starts to cover up that image as you're scrolling down until you get to the bottom of this A layer, and then it's going to trigger that new slide to come in. So if I go look at a second page here, so here you'll see they've done that same snapping trick. They've drawn an invisible box all the way up to the top and put the chevron down here so that when it snaps into place, it's going to snap right here to the very top, but the first thing you're going to see is this chevron because this box is invisible. And if you're curious about what's on which layer, of course, you can always go back to your layers palette and just turn layers on and off to see what they've put where. So as I turn off the A layer, I lose that. I turn off the B layer, I lose the caption. And that image is what's on the very background layer. If you go out to our website, there's an area called Mag Plus Showcase where we've taken little screen capture videos of a number of layouts that our clients have done showing creative use of these layers and ways to present content on the device. There's certainly no one right or wrong way to do it, no set width that a text column has to be or size that a text should be, or even that text should be on the top layer and something else should be on the bottom layer. I'll show you one more interesting example that you can do that actually allows you to turn that layer off. So maybe you're not quite sure how to use the layers and you want to try something that's a little bit more basic and is sort of constrained to the edges of the screen. So let me go back out to my demo folder and I'm going to grab a page out of Outside Magazine. Nope, not that one. Oh, it's in a different place. I'm going to go here. Here we go. This is a long feature story. Outside runs some wonderful long feature stories. And the way that they like to present those is without that A layer scrolling. They like a sort of contained, almost page-like experience. And again, there's no right or wrong answer to this. It's really what you think works for your readers, your users, what your editors think is the best way to do it. So let me hit the fast review button and we'll put this out in the simulator and then we'll come back and look at how they did it. I think there's about 5 or 6 pages to this story, so it's going to take a little longer. It's got some big images in it to write those blocks. So here I see my starter. Now this looks like everything else that we've seen before, but now when I scroll up, rather than this text scrolling over the top of that image, that whole image is just going to slide out. So this is just like what we did before, but with that A layer turned off. So now my second page is this big beautiful image of a tiger. Again, I can still use that pinning function by putting things on the B pin blocks layer. So you can see that caption will still move no matter how I'm looking at it. And you'll see that also the scroll arrow and the little outside October 2011 stays visible. And now when I get to my text pages, I can do my intro text, I can do columns of text like this, I get to a second page, and so on and so forth. So if I go back to see how we did that here, let's just go ahead and look at the second page, my tiger. And all I've done to do that is check this box, no A layer. As long as I check that and I put all of my content here on the B layer, the system will know that there is no A layer to scroll over the top and it'll function just like this. Now you'll notice with that outside text, let me go back and show you this again, this little house text down here, it says the brand and the month, appears in this corner in the horizontal and appears down centered here. Now that's actually not pinning. When we go back and look at the way that that was done, and let's just pull up that specific page, the designer has actually put this on the layout twice. Because again, if I go back to my guide layer, we can see that this is only going to be visible in this orientation. Once the user turns it, it'll be cropped off, and this is only going to be visible in this orientation. So that's another way to control what things are going to look like in either orientation is by using these kind of extra spaces over to the side outside of this always visible 768 pixel square area. Now let's look at how to do something a little bit extra. Let's say you want to add a movie into your design. Super simple to do, and a lot of different options for how you can do that. And importantly, it's still done here in InDesign, because we really believe that the same people who are deciding that this headline should be this size and it should go here in relation to the picture should be the ones who decide how moving assets like video should be incorporated. So here I'm going to go to this helicopter story. And let's do the same thing. Let's jump out to the simulator and see how it works, and then we'll come back and look at how it was built. So I'm going to hit my fast review. You can see my front page looks, my top of my vertical looks the same as some of the other things that we're building. But now watch what happens when we get to the second page. We scroll down all of our text about this helicopter. As soon as that second slide comes into view, I've got this really cool video that plays of the helicopter moving in slow motion. And now when we get to the end of this video, the video is going to disappear and leave the layout that I've created behind it. So it ends right in that spot, and then my little annotations appear here. So I'll show you how we did that. So this A layer again, or this top of this vertical rather, pretty basic, just like the other thing we built. We put the headline up here, we put a little subhead here, we've put the text down below the visible area and the horizontal orientation, so you just see this. People can scroll up. Let's jump into page 2 where it gets interesting. I'm going to delete the boxes I've used to put this movie in and add it fresh. So the way that I put a movie in here is about as simple as can be. I select an element on either layer that I want this movie to be linked to, and what that means is if I have pinning set on a particular object and I want that movie to move the same way the other object does when somebody turns the device, that's the reason that I give it a reference object on here, so it knows A, what layer it's on, and B, what kind of pinning settings it should have. In this case, it's going to be a full screen movie that's going to be on the B layer, so it's not going to either pin or be on the A layer and turn off when somebody double taps. So I just select this group as my reference object, down here into the plugin, click Add Movie. Now what that's done is actually draw 2 boxes over the top of that reference object I just created. And if I go back to my layers palette, one of the boxes is here on this media areas layer. Now that's literally the area that the movie will appear in when I set it to play, depending on what kind of setting I use, and I'll explain what that means. The other box that's drawn is on my clickable areas layer. That's exactly what it sounds like. This is your hotspot. Anywhere this box is where the user can tap to activate that movie, to play or to pause it. Now you can also put in your own custom play buttons if you'd like and put this box over the top of it, or you can use another sort of advanced function we have called control images, where you can set a play button. When the user hits it, you can automatically have it load a pause button or just disappear until the movie's done playing and then revert back to the play button. How to do that is out in our guide. I won't quite get into it today, but we'll cover it in a future webinar. So with both of these boxes, it's drawn them in the same place and the same size as that reference object, but I'm not locked to that. I can make these any size I want, and I can move them around now. So let's say I only want the clickable area for this movie to be at the top of this. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but let's say I do. Now here's my media areas layer. It's going to take up this whole full screen space. Now to tell it what to play in here, I just go back to my plugin. I'm choosing inline movie, and what that means is just like you saw that movie play, it means the video is going to play but without any sort of frame around it. You're not going to see movie play controls. Now this is a really useful option when you want it to seem, as we say, kind of like magic. That element's just going to start moving automatically and the user's not going to know exactly why it did. It's going to feel like an integrated part of the page rather than like a video you've just stuck on top. The source type can be either a file, and that means it's going to be embedded in the issue. So that means it's going to work even when the user's offline and typically give you a little bit better quality. Or if you've got a video that you do want to stream out from the internet when the user is online, you can select URL here and just point it. If it is a file, you can hit this file button and it'll actually automatically select file if I hit this because it knows that I'm using an embedded then. Hit my file and I'm going to go out to my folder. Oops, wrong one. And video, and choose this .movie file. Now in terms of what types of file formats it supports, really whatever works in the iPad. So .mov, .m4v, etc. And you can play around with different compression settings to get the best control. So here I'm going to say, I'm just going to point it to my file, click open, and that's kind of all there is to it. Now it's ready to go. I have a couple of other options though that I can use. One is auto start. Now that's what you saw before. As soon as I got to that page or as soon as I got to that second slide rather, it started playing. And it did that because I clicked Auto Start, and I clicked Auto Start in View. Now the difference between On Load and In View is that as soon as the user swipes to that vertical, it's loading the entire vertical. So that movie would start playing even though the user couldn't see it yet. That's not the experience I want here. I want the movie to sit there until they've scrolled down. Then when they get there, in other words, when it comes into view, that's when I want it to start playing. So I've selected Auto Start in View. And then I want that movie to disappear when it's done playing so that I can see these captions and things behind it. So I've clicked Hide Media at End. If I uncheck that, you'd just be left with the last frame of the video on screen. So let's hit Fast Review and see if this is working the way we intend it to. So you can see there's my layout. I scroll to the bottom of my first layer, get my second layer in there, and then the movie starts to play. Now the user can actually tap the screen to pause it or play it if they want to. But typically with this kind of movie, they'll just let it play. Now let's see what happens if I choose the couple of other types of ways to do this. So let's say I don't want this to be a full screen. I just want it to come up in the middle. I want it to be that big. And I want it to pop up over the top of it. Then I click Pop-Up Movie. And we'll show you what that looks like. So there it's actually going to appear in a typical movie player window. And I still set it to auto start, so it's still going to auto start playing, but here I've got my play and pause, and then if I want to get rid of it I can just click the done button up there and it'll disappear. So the other option I have is what's called a full screen movie, and that's just kind of the typical behavior of any full screen movie, or whether you're watching Netflix or anything else, where it's going to take over the entire screen and give me my controls, and I'll show you what that looks like here. This is kind of like the full screen inline, but slightly different in that you're going to get some controls. Oh, my pop-up has bugged my reviewer, so let's start over again. Let me hit the Fast Review button and send this out. Now let's scroll down to this second layer. Let's come in View. Now you can see it's taken over this entire page. It's going to work in either orientation at the size that I've had it. Now if I tap the screen, I get my play and pause controls, and I get my done button that I can make it go away. If I tap where that hotspot is again, it'll play the video again. So lots of options about how you integrate these types of moving assets into your layout and what value they have for you in telling the story. It doesn't always have to be just a tap here to watch this person talk sort of video. I'll show you one other option in here quickly before we jump into the other pieces of the tool, and that's how to embed an HTML object. And I actually want to show you how we're going to create that HTML object using an automated wizard we have called the Feature Builder. So just about anything that you can build in HTML, you can put into a Mag Plus layout. And it's very simple to do. And we do that so that you've got a ton of flexibility about the kinds of interactive elements and slideshows and 360s and those sorts of things that you want to put in here. But we also understand that a lot of print designers, which are a lot of the folks using this tool set, may not be HTML coders, may not know how to build these things. So we've created a tool we call the Mag Plus Feature Builder. It's just, you can find it at feature.magplus.com. You can log in with the same login you've used on magplus.com when you downloaded the tools. If you don't have one yet, go to magplus.com and create an account, and then come back here. You'll see the first time you click in, you can check the type of thing you want to create. Right now they're all image-based, but we'll be filling this out with lots of other options in the coming months. So I click Images. I can name my project because the site's actually going to save all of the HTML projects I create. So I'm going to say Test. I'm going to say Banksy Photos because that's what I'm going to populate this with. These are never visible. These are to the public. These are just for your own reference. Here I'm just going to pick a size. I can't remember what size my photos are, but let's say 480 by 480. I can set this in pixels, inches, millimeters, etc., so I can make sure this is really integrating into my layout exactly the way I want it to. I click Next, and then I can decide what type of element I want to create here. Do I want a photo gallery where people see thumbnails of the photos and they can tap them? Do I want a slideshow that you can just swipe your way through? An image sequence is the ability to run your finger over the top of that element and have new images load. You often see that in a 360-degree rotation of an object, for instance. Or like a pinch and zoom type of thing, where maybe you want that people to be able to keep zooming in on that photo to see more and more detail. I'll do a gallery with thumbnails this time, so I'll select that, hit next. Now I have to add my images to it. And let's see where I put my put all of my different elements here. Now, I don't know what I did with my Banksy photos, so I'm just going to actually, let's grab a few out of here. This is bad file organization here. Let's just build it with our couple of food pictures we were working with before. Oh, and I clicked TIFF, so those aren't actually going to work. Okay, let's try this again. Let's go back up into my demo material, and I know I've got a couple of images here. Let's just pick these JPEGs. Okay, so what it's done there is it's uploaded my JPEGs. I'm going to hit save. This is going to be a pretty boring slideshow because there's only 2 images in it. Now when I get to this screen, I can crop these images differently if I want to. I can get rid of them and add more if I want to do that. I can change the size and the name and all those things. If I click on the settings here, I get all sorts of settings about how I want this to actually look. There are some built-in themes that'll give you colors and arrow styles, or I can choose individually the background color that comes up behind the thumbnails, an image that I want to appear back there. I can put a mask over the top of the slideshow, so I could put, say, a cool edge around the slideshow by just uploading an image here. I can change whether I want, what kind of JPEG quality I want it to output, what's the transition speed I want to happen when somebody taps those thumbnails. And then when I want to see what this is actually going to look like, even before I drop it into my Mag Plus layout, I can just hit preview. It'll build this and show it to me in a browser. So I can see, okay, here's my arrows are that color, and this is my background color. If I tap these, it changes pretty quickly. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. It's pretty ugly, but it'll function. So then I just click the export button here, and the system's going to build this little HTML element for you and put it in a neat little zip file that it'll download to your computer, and we'll just go ahead and open it directly. I'm going to get this folder called build, and inside of it I'm going to have my converted images here. So here's my thumbnail images, here are my full-size images, my 480 by 480 converted images, my JavaScript to control it, my little arrows. All of those things are bundled together here, and my HTML file. Now when I go back into the system, let's get rid of this movie, and let's just put this, let's say instead of the captions here, I want a slideshow to be on top of it. So I'm going to pick the A layer. Actually, let's just get rid of that too. So I'm going to put this on the A layer. I'm going to draw a box. Now, I can't remember what size I made it, so I'm just going to make sure it's a square box, and I'll show you why that works here. And now over here under this object type, I haven't really had to mess with this before because block is our pretty standard object type. Text, images, those sorts of things are always in a block. That's kind of the default. When I created my movie or my clickable areas, it automatically chose these types for those boxes that created, whether it was a hotspot or a media box. The only time I really need to worry about it is here when I'm doing HTML. So now I've drawn a box and I want to tell the system that that's an HTML box. What that means is that what I've essentially just drawn here is a web browser. Now it's a web browser that's not going to have any frame around it, just like our inline movie. It's not going to have any edge. It's going to be seamlessly integrated. But this browser now is going to load whatever I tell it to. That could be a URL. I could have it load a web page if the user is online. But in this case, I just want it to load that HTML file and all of those assets that I've already created. I can still do my pinning here on this box, but I'm going to turn that off. I'm snapping again as well. So here, instead of typing in a URL, I'm going to click my file, go to my downloads, and all I need to do is point it at this HTML file. Now this HTML file is referencing all the things here in this assets folder, so it's going to know when I hit export to bundle in everything that HTML file is pointing to. So I don't have to worry about the JavaScript and the images and all that. It's going to grab those automatically. All I need to do is point to this. Now you can see it's still an empty box here because all it's doing is referencing that HTML object. But if I want to see how this is actually going to look, I can also place an image in here. The user's never going to see it. This is really for my own reference. What they're going to see is that HTML document. You see when I did this build, it also exported for me a PNG. This is basically a screenshot of my HTML element. So I'm going to place this in. Now I can see that that HTML element's actually a little bit smaller than this box that I've made. So I'm just going to change the size of the box. I've also got over here a button that says Scale Contents to Fit Block. So if I had left this to be a little bit bigger, as long as it was square, it would just scale this up to fit inside this box, or scale it down if I wanted it to be a little smaller. In this case, I'll just make it basically the same size here. And even if it's a little bit bigger, I don't have to worry about it because the system's going to scale it up. Now let's just hit the fast review. That's really all I need to do to point to it. It's really draw a box, point to HTML. Let's go out and see how this looks. It's probably a little bit weird because I don't have anything on this background layer. So here's my HTML object. I have a blank background. I didn't put any image back here, so that's why you're just seeing a black background. This is on the A layer, so you can see that it's scrolling freely up and down. But now when I tap my images, there we go. If I had more images than fit here, I would be able to tap these arrows and bring them in. I can always go back up to my feature builder and say, you know what, actually I don't want it to be a thumbnail, I want it to be just a simple swiping slideshow. Hit the save button, preview or export. Now you can see I've got a slideshow that doesn't use thumbnails, but it's just swiped. Lots of options for how to do that, lots of interesting things you can do with HTML. So now in the few minutes we have left, I want to show you the couple of other pieces of the Mag Plus system. We've been working a lot here in the tools. This is really the fun part where you do all the creation, but at some point you need to say you're done with it and then export it out and start building your issue with it. So let's just go ahead and work with this page. Here under the issue, I'm going to select folder and I'm going to point to that issue folder that I just created before. So that's going to always tell it to export to that folder. It's got a name and an ID here. So now I'm going to click the export button. Now what this is doing in the background, you're not seeing, is it's triggering Photoshop to do all of that conversion. It still happened relatively quickly. Now let's go ahead and take a look in our production tool. So this is the Mag Plus production tool. This is the other piece that comes in that software bundle that you've downloaded. It is an Adobe Air application, so it's super simple to install. And this really gives you an overview of all these exported pages, and it's where you can kind of organize them around. So this is a short issue of Outside Magazine here. So let's say I wanted dispatches to actually come after this other page. I can just drag them and put them in the order I want them to be. Let's look at the file that I just exported. So up here I'm pointing to this issue folder that we'd created before for Outside, or that I pulled down to my system. But I want to point to a new issue folder. So I hit this plus button. I'm going to go out to my folder. There's my issue. I'm going to hit select. And now you'll see I haven't exported any, I haven't dragged any pages into it. It's a new folder. But that page that I just exported, that vertical, is here in my clipboard. So from here I can just take and drag and drop it into my main verticals area. This is where I can start to populate. What's interesting here is you see that full layout. You can see that this is all of the first page of that InDesign document. Here's my break. Here's my second page. I can zoom in and out from here. I can also review from here. So if I just hit review selected, make sure my push function is on. Oh, that's not going to work yet. Now the first time you go into your production tool, you have to set up a brand, and that's just giving it kind of an identification for all of the verticals, or all of the issues rather, that you're going to export to create your final issue file with. You want those to all be organized kind of the same way, or have the same identifier on them so that the app knows how to read them. Now I don't have a brand set up, so I'll show you quickly how to do that. Just go to your preferences, go to open brand settings editor. This is all covered in our tutorials as well. I'm going to click new. None of this is ever going to be public facing, so it really doesn't matter what you type. This is just for your reference. All you need to do is give it an ID and a description, and then pick a default MIB version. You're probably always going to want to pick the most recent one. In this case we're on 2.5. When I hit save, it's going to create this magplus.mags file. Now this is just a file that's storing this information, so you can put this anywhere. I typically put it in my issue folder just so I know where to find it. Once I'm done here, I can click close, go back here, and now in this brand I see that description of the thing I just created. And now for each issue, so that applies to my overall brand, but now for each issue I have to give it an issue ID, so I'm going to call this one Test Issue 1. And the orientation I've left is auto, so now I can go ahead and save that there. Now I've hit my push button. What that means is it's going to push it out to that reviewer automatically. If I hit review selected, this happens even faster. There's my page again. Now if this were all I needed to do and I was happy with this issue, I would just hit this create MIB button, and that would give me my final issue file. In fact, let's go ahead and hit it, and now I'll go out to the issue folder and show you what that looks like. So now here in my demo material issue, so now here's my issue folder. You can see when I clicked export, it created a folder called verticals inside, and it's created a subfolder for every one of those verticals that I've exported, and it's named it with that vertical ID that I had in there. Inside of that is the XML. This is really what tells the system how to render this page. Thumbnails for the scrubber preview in the app. All of my converted assets are in here. So here's my HTML folder. It's grabbed and bundled everything together. And that MIB that I just created, MIB just is the issue format we use, is here. This is where I've exported it to. So this is my actual issue file. What I would do with that, if I were all done and I wanted to publish this out to the world, is I would go to my publish portal. Now, publish is something you get access to once you actually sign up with us to go ahead and get ready to publish an app. We set you up with your own system out here, and we'll just jump in and show you, well, since we've been picking on outside today, let's show you their publish portal in the back end. And there's nothing really proprietary in here. This is just showing you their issues. So then I would go out to my portal if I were Outside Magazine and I was happy with this issue. Here under my Issues tab, I can click Add New Issue. When I do, I'll upload kind of a little thumbnail for it. This is what will appear in the in-app store. I can give it a name. I can give it a little description here. And I can upload that MIB file that I've just put out. Now, as soon as I do that, and I click the Publish button, it's going to appear in the in-app store or library of the users that are that have my app. So that's really all it takes to publish an issue. All the work and the fun is really on the creation side. Publishing an issue is really pretty quick and simple. So that pretty much takes us to the end of our hour here. I hope you've learned something. As I said, there's this whole bunch of tutorial videos out on our site. We'll just jump out there and I'll show you those. There's also an area we call, so under Using Mag Plus here, there's all kinds of information as well as embedded videos about what you can, all of our tutorial videos about how to use our system. If we go to Showcase, this is a really fun area where we do these screen capture videos of cool things that people have built with our system. So this is always fun to watch, and we'll be continuing to update this so you can see different ways to use the tools. And the last thing I want to mention before I go is a cool thing we have going on right now called our design contest. You can get to it from out here on our home site and sign up. And really what this is a way for you to download our tools, build something with them, and it can be anything you want. It can be your portfolio, it can be an idea for a magazine you have, it could be a catalog, it could be something for your business. Take the tools, build it, get all the way through to that step I just did where you created a MIB, and then instead of uploading that MIB to the back end, you're just going to go to our site and send it to us. We'll take a look at them, and we're going to have two different winners of this contest. We're going to have a panel of 3 judges. We're going to look at all these MIBs that are submitted, and we're looking for really the most creative, interesting use of the tools. Now, you don't have to build your entire issue out. Just build enough to show us kind of what you would use the tools to do and how it would work and function. We're going to take the 3 that we like the most, and we're going to put them up online and let the public vote among those 3 and pick a sort of public winner. And then we're also going to pick a jury favorite ourselves. So there'll be 2 winners. And what you win is your own iPad app. That $2,500 branded reader app that I mentioned at the beginning, we'll give you that for free. So you can take this really cool thing that you've built, put it out to the public for free, and get it out there and let people see it. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any more questions, you can always go to magplus.com or email us at support@magplus. We'll be coming back on November 17th to do another one of these. We're going to look at some of the new features in our 3.0 version, which will be coming out in November, as well as diving a little deeper into some other topics like video and HTML and those things as well. If you want to watch this again, just head out to magplus.com. Thanks a lot, everybody, and have a good day.